All right, are you able to see the screen okay, Katie?
Yep.
All right, good deal. All right, hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Scott Hammond. I'm a security engineer with Nexum, and we're here to review some of those firewall features that you may not be aware of or leveraging to its full potential. A little bit about me. Started in desktop, as most folks do, on a Novell / NT4 environment that was quickly migrated to Server 2000. Eventually got bored of all that, asked my director what he needed help with, and he pointed at this blue box and said, hey, that's a switch. Every time we send somebody to training, they leave here for more money. So I'm not sending you to training. But I was that kind of bored that I picked it up, cracked open the manual, sat down on the keyboard and sorted it all out. Next thing you know, I'm a network engineering, getting into core and WAN routing, figured out the dreaded Cisco WAS. Only thing worse than that, I think, was the ACE, the application control engine line card for the Cat 5 6500, which I think was pretty much the Nickelback of Cisco line cards. And I'm still suffering from PTSD there. From there, I spent quite a few years making Nortel Option 81s go away, and I did start on Call Manager 4.0, which, if you recall, ran on Microsoft Server, so more PTSD. And while working on data center build-outs, I kind of turned my focus to security and picked up, the regulars: Checkpoint, ASA, Firepower, SRX skills, before I found my way to Palo. Whew, thank goodness. And a little bit about Nexum. So Nexum's got over 20 years in the security industry. We're a very engineering heavy company, far more engineers than there are sales folks, because we're all about advisory, implementation, and managed services. We are a service disabled, veteran-owned small business, and we're that partner that is really keen on what's right for the client. What does the customer need? We're focused on the outcome and what's best for them versus just selling them features, selling them a box, and walking away. All right, so since we were speaking about ancient technology that I've worked on, not in the Q&A so much, but if you guys want to drop into the chat how many of these 5 things you recognize, I'd be kind of interested to know. Thinking back to NT4.0 and all that, I was like, that's making me think way back to some of this stuff. But you're probably going to notice that one of them doesn't really belong. And I thought about putting Ethereal in here, but I thought it'd be more interesting for me to finally Google and figure out why Ethereal spontaneously changed its name to Wireshark. And in answer to that trivia, I found out that in 2006, there was a trademark issue that required the name change. So how long have I been doing networking? Since Wireshark was Ethereal. All right, why are we here? Okay, so Palo Alto Networks has very efficiently grouped its myriad of products into 3 easy to digest pillars. In the most recent SE conference, Lee Klarich, Palo's chief product officer, was asked, why 3 pillars? To which he just kind of grinned ear to ear and looked at the audience and said, because it's the right number. And the more I think about that, the more I agree with Lee completely. So starting off, we got the Prisma pillar. This includes Prisma Cloud and Prisma SASE. SASE, of course, is comprised of Prisma Access, SD-WAN, and the Autonomous Digital Experience Management piece, or ADEM for short. From there, we hit the Cortex pillar, where you'll find Cortex XDR, Data Lake, XSOAR, Expanse, XIM, and everything that's included in the Unit 42 catalog, which some of the other presenters talked a little bit about. Huge capabilities there. But what am I talking about today? I'm here to focus on the big one, Strata. And within the Strata pillar, you're going to find all things PAN-OS. All right, what is PAN-OS? Glad you asked. I'm going to tell you. It's the operating system that runs on Palo Alto Networks hardware and software-based next-generation firewalls, all of which have these fun features that we're going to talk about. But before we get on to those Easter eggs, let's look at some of the major versions. And I know I kind of alluded to this earlier during Ron's presentation that I would get into some of this. So kicking it off, let's start with 8.0. I can vaguely remember using 8.0 when I very first started on Palo. Don't judge. It wasn't until the last 4 years or so I found my way to the land of unicorn and rainbows that is Palo. But yes, I remember 8.0. 8.1, we had some good stuff coming here. You know, what's a good firewall without rule usage tracking? Version 9, boom, mic drop. Palo changed lives that day. Policy optimizer's unused rule and app ID adoption capability drove a huge exodus for us from 8x up to 9. 9.1 came SD-WAN because it was all the rage at the time and arguably still all the rage for branch environments. And then came 10.0, or as I like to call it, the Yellow Brick Road edition, where ML-powered attack prevention and IoT came to be. And urban legend has it that this was rushed in due to the response to COVID-19. I've never actually seen that documented, but that it was released in July of 2020 and into life just 2 years later, I'd say that's a fair bet. Most of them have had about a 3-4 year term in office. So just to reiterate what Bob said earlier, it has been retired and you should be looking to upgrade if you're still on it. 10.1, who doesn't love a good integrated CASB? And advanced URL filtering is way better than not advanced URL filtering. 10.2 came cloud delivered AI, which we've heard a lot about today. And well, what does that mean? You guys heard it already. It means not relying on locally cached signatures, but rather a shared global intelligence. And most recently, Nova, AI Ops 2.5 is born, and version skipping has been announced. So if you're not familiar with version skipping, because this is fairly new, there's not a lot of documentation out there. Panorama managed devices running 10.1 and later can skip up to 3 versions during upgrade and downgrade. And if you've ever done an upgrade before, you know what a tedious process that is, particularly on a big jump from, say, 9x up to 10.2. Now, I can tell you from firsthand experience at the SE Summit earlier this month, I was able to successfully upgrade a VM series from 10.1 directly to 11.0 Nova with absolute ease. Very welcome feature from Palo Alto. Well, and this is what I want to talk to you guys about today. Hidden treasures, Easter eggs, call it what you will. The sometimes overlooked or lesser known features within PAN-OS. So let's start simple and go straight to troubleshooting. Troubleshooting tool is analogous to Cisco's ASDM packet tracer, in my opinion, and for my legacy Cisco peeps in the audience. And I know you're thinking, yeah, Scott, that was what in the EDU 210 class, we know about this. Well, actually, it was a single slide in the 220 class. And if you were like me, completely new to Palo and drinking from the EDU and Beacon fire hose, you totally missed that one slide and then maybe stumbled onto it well after the fact. And there you're scratching your head and wondering. And some of you might actually be scrambling to log into a firewall right now to see if I'm actually making this up. So it's there. It's not super easy to find. It's hugely useful in a complex environment. So we're going to take a look at the default, which is the security policy match, and work through a real live scenario that I had in an environment where DNS wasn't resolving. And sure, I probably, being the seasoned engineer that I am, would have went about this a different way and not used troubleshooting, but I wanted to showcase what it could do. So DNS wasn't resolving, and we're not finding what we need in the logs. No denies. And yes, logging at the session end on the interzone default, which is a bit so many of us so many times until we have that Homer Simpson duh moment. So here we're going to enter our zones, source and destination, populate the addresses, port and protocol. We execute, and the test result column reveals the match security policy with details on the right showing a match. Pretty useful, but DNS still doesn't work. So what do we do now? And we're going to hit that drop down, select type, see what other options we have. And this is quite the troubleshooting tool belt, Batman. We've got all kinds of options. So if we matched on security policy, I'm going to move on down to the NAT. And here, you'll see the same, populated the zones, the IPs and port, and we see that we're passing that. Passing result detail shows that we're matching our path that's been configured. All right, so what else can we check? Well, if there's no denies, passing the security policy in NAT, I'm going to go straight to routing. So we pull that drop down, we go to routing, we put our destination IP in, execute, and all right, looks like we got a default route pointing out ETH13. So from there, logically, I'm going to go straight to trace route and try to figure out where in the path it's failing, but trace route's immediately failing. So, what does that mean to me? Maybe we should back up. If I checked for the route to quad 8, I didn't check for a route to the 172.16.00/24. So we're going to back up and do that. Run a trace route and find that it immediately fails as well. Look at that. It's the same interface that we had to the quad 8, which we know is the default route, right? So now I need to go check the trust zone interfaces and look for errors in that addressing. So just to wrap this one up, this was a quick one for you guys. I just wanted to go over these options because this is something that is often overlooked. We can go in and test all of these individual things, and this can help you sort out misconfigurations or where to start with your troubleshooting for newer and even seasoned Palo engineers. Moving on, and this might be another, yep, I knew that was there, Scott, but I think it falls into that often overlooked category. I was recently troubleshooting a Prisma Access deployment via Zoom with a client, and he kept toggling back and forth from traffic to threat to URL as we tried to hunt down this problem with the URL filtering. It wasn't working correctly. And I just said, hey, why don't you click on Unified down there? And then you see those blue arrows. Click on those blue arrows. This guy was absolutely speechless for a full 30 seconds and said, Scott, I've been using Palo for over 4 years, and I had no idea that was there. He said, yes, I saw the word unified at the bottom of the logging, but every time I saw it, I had Cisco chills go down my spine, with unified being one of their favorite marketing words. So I never actually clicked on it to see what it did. Armed with this new knowledge, he was able to consolidate all those logs into a single display to allow for a more streamlined approach to troubleshooting, and we quickly figured out what the problem was. So the highlights on that, now we know we've got the ability to expand the scope of your log view to get all that pertinent information in your immediate field of vision and make the world a better place quickly. All right, now we're getting into some stuff. Fun stuff, device quarantine. So you've probably noticed spots in the GUI that reference quarantine, and then you make some silent mental comment about this isn't Trend Micro, brush it off and you go on about your day. But if any of you've got curious and you navigate to the device tab and go to device quarantine, you likely saw a great big huge empty list. So how do I get things into this list, and what can I actually do with it? Well, the administrator can add them manually, like we see here, but they can also be added automatically via a log forwarding profile or a hit match. And as much as you might expect, it can be populated with the magic of APIs and redistribution from other devices. But for now, we're going to take a look at the log profile, the log forwarding profile example. So from here, I went to objects, log forwarding, added a new profile called auto quarantine, And from here, added a simple match list of anything in the threat log classified with a critical severity. And those matches will populate the equating devices into the quarantine list. Pretty cool, right? So here we've got the quarantine box checked in the HIP match log. This particular example is filtered to a unique host, but you can see there are some very flexible means to get data into this list. All right, so I've got a list full of suspicious devices. It's dynamically populating or manually populating. So now what? What do I do with it? Well, you guys have probably noticed in building security policies out that for the device, you can specify quarantine as either the source or destination in that security policy, like the one we have right here. But wait, there's more. I'm betting a few of you here know what Global Protect is. And lo and behold, you can restrict Global Protect login for anything that has found its way onto Santa's naughty list. Cool feature, really cool feature, underutilized. So wrapping up, we know we can populate the list via logs and such things like critical threat detection, HIP matches, or API and redistribution. But what does this get us from a practical sense? I mean, nothing much, just the ability to dynamically apply security policy to potentially compromised endpoints. And by dynamically, I mean, just like Henry mentioned with the case of EDLs, no commit required. Quarantine and EDLs are features that fall into that sleep better at night category for me. And as an added bonus, we can export that list and add it to a SOC or hand it to a SOC analyst or help desk resource so they can go bug hunting and figure out what's wrong with this particular endpoint. Really cool stuff that I don't see a lot of people leveraging. All right, now we're going to get into a big one. So Palo Alto AI Ops is an artificial intelligence and machine learning based solution that is designed to enhance network security operations. In the spirit of defining my acronyms, it stands for exactly that: artificial intelligence for IT operations. It uses advanced algorithms and analytics to identify patterns and anomalies in your network traffic, then automatically provides insights to help security teams identify and mitigate potential threats effectively. So this solution helps teams gain a better understanding of the network activity in general, streamline the security operations, and eliminate those manual tasks that can cause delays in the incident response process. It provides real-time visibility into that network traffic, automatically detects and classifies potential security threats, and then provides a prioritized recommendation for the actions to be taken. So just like, all good presentations, I need to make a Gartner reference at this point, where they've been quoted as saying through 2025, 99% of all cloud security failures will be the customer's fault. And 99% of all firewall breaches through 2023 will be due to firewall misconfigurations, not flaws. All right, so where does this awesome product actually live? Well, it's on the App Hub. And when you sign in, you'll see front and center that there are actually two different versions, like on this slide. So the free version on the left gives you configuration assessment, system health visibility, log analysis. You set up email notifications. It gives you BPA reports. So we have touched on BPA a little bit in previous presentations today. I'll go into more depth on that here in a little bit, but stay tuned. A lot of good stuff on BPA here. For the paid version, the premium version of AI Ops, you also get anomaly detection, threat insights, operational health analytics, integration with ServiceNow, and one-click ticket creation with Palo support. Now, does that mean if I start with free and I decide to go to the premium edition, I need to start from scratch? No, not at all. When you're in the interface, you'll see that the premium versions are grayed out. And you'll have a little blue plus sign that if you want to click on, it'll say, hey, you need to upgrade and go buy a license to do this. All right, so how do I enable this thing? Like I said, it's in the App Hub. For those of you that aren't familiar, Palo has published all of the cloud-based applications that we know and love, like Cortex Data Lake, Prisma Insights, Cloud Identity Engine, for example, up to this App Hub. So for this example, we need to start from the tenant-centric view of the App Hub, where you'll find AI Ops and you'll click on Activate. Now, if you don't see AI Ops, that means you aren't in the tenant-centric view. And quite honestly, it's a little confusing. It actually took Palo Tac to explain a few things to me on this when I got into a situation where I couldn't find the apps that I needed. So let me see if I can shed some light and save you some pain. When you log in, on the left, you'll see a button that says View by Support Account. If that button is selected, you're in what Palo is referring to as App Hub 1.0. If it's deselected, then on the right, you're going to see a tenant or multiple tenants listed. From this tenant-centric view, you're in what is called App Hub 2.0. Now, just a little caveat there, some apps only exist in one hub or the other, which is where some of the confusion exists. But rest assured, it's improving constantly. As with everything else with Palo, they're making it better all the time. All right, now back to AI Ops that I've shared a little bit of my growing pains on learning how to use this. Remember I pointed out that I highlighted 10.0 was the ML capability. So if anybody's logged into a 10.0 and up Firewall, you've seen that enable telemetry pop up, which I'm sure you instinctively ignored by pressing whatever button makes it go away as fast as possible. Well, you can enable this by clicking the gears. Oh, got ahead of myself. Clicking the gears, checking the boxes, and you should be good. Although notice this says certificate status is valid. If you don't have a valid device certificate, that's no bueno. You're going to need to pop into the support portal and go generate one for that device to actually connect to AI Ops. All right, so now let's take a look at what the interface actually looks like. All right, on this dashboard, we have all sorts of high-level goodness. In my lab, looks like device health is good, but health alerts exist relating to content updates. Device security is a bit lacking, and it looks like we have no shortage of BPA alerts either. BPA, right? Keeps coming back up. BPA stands for Best Practice Assessment, and I'll keep harping on that. But what's the first security alert that we see here? Quick App. Quick App is not denied. And I saw this come up in the Q&A earlier, and I know I answered that individual, but just for the rest of us, if you didn't know, Quick is Google's latest experimental transport layer protocol. And in short, it uses UDP and it has encryption built in. So why is that bad? That sounds fast. That sounds nice. Well, because we can't decrypt it. And if we can't decrypt it, well, then you're failing to leverage all of the great next-gen tools that Palo offers. And that's why the best practice is to block it so that the industry standard protocols are used rather than Quick. All right, so let's take a look at what else is in here. All right, this one's a real-time adoption summary. If you've used the manual BPAs before, this will look familiar to you, only a little bit more cutting edge. Now, here we go. So again, if you don't know, BPA is a super helpful tool available to customers and partners. I know the other guys talked about it a little bit, but it's for validating that your firewall is configured per best practices. To run one before AI Ops, you needed to generate, download a tech support file, go to the support portal or to the customer success portal for us partners, upload it, map some zones, and then poof, instant manager candy. So BPA, as it's rumored, as we know it, is going away in the middle of May. Although that may get pushed back because some of the feature parity isn't quite there yet, but it is going away. And I was a little resistant to that at first, but when I finally got some stick time with AI Ops, I quickly changed my mind. Excuse me. So I attended a lab the other day at the SE Summit. And in this particular lab, you were configuring a security policy on Panorama with a service type of any, which not ideal, right? We want that application default. We want something in there. Any's are bad. So you commit the change and you attempt to push it out. But guess what? It fails. Fails the AI Ops best practice check. So the firewall would not permit the push. How awesome is that? I mean, we've been able to enforce things, you know, at a higher level, like comments and descriptions and policies to make sure that everyone's configuring these in a very similar fashion. But now we can actually enforce common sense to a certain degree. And it was at that point that it really clicked to me. And I was like, all right, I am loving this thing more and more. Everything that I see in it is good. And one of those things that I see that I really like, threat insights. Now, yeah, I mentioned this is one of the premium features, but this little nifty dashboard is showing you block threats versus allowed threats, which for my money is the one that you need to get in front of your management teams. This is directly showcasing your return on investment with your Palo Alto Networks partnership. Fantastic stuff. So Palo's investing heavily into AI Ops, and telemetry is enabling them to gather health information as well as best practice information from all of the devices. And it'll soon be seen natively integrated into some of the other products, like I would guess in the Prisma pillar to start with. Another potential, I can see this coming feature to AI Ops, RMA capability. Wouldn't it be super cool if Palo TAC called you out of the blue to ask you where to ship a replacement power supply that you didn't even know needed replaced? Machine-led, human-empowered. That's what we need to get to. Free up our time. So in summary, Palo Alto Networks AI Ops is an advanced security solution that uses AI and machine learning to help security teams address potential threats and all of these vulnerabilities proactively rather than reactively. All right, moving on. And I'll get to the questions at the end. I'm sorry, guys. I know that you got some good questions in there. I see them popping up, but I want to try to get through the bulk of this. We've got maybe 15 more slides after this, so I'll keep trudging forward, and then I'll try to take care of you when we get to the end there. So, and this will be a quicker one. Automated correlation engine. This is an analytics tool that uses logs on the firewall to detect actionable events in your environment. It's supported on the 7000 series, the 5450s, 5200s, 3200s, and Panorama. What it does is it correlates a series of related threat events that, when combined, indicate a likely compromised host on your network or some other higher level conclusion. It can be found on the monitor tab near the bottom. And when you go down here, the first thing you're going to see, monitor, ACC, the automated correlation engine, and correlation objects. And what an object is a definition file that specifies patterns to match against. Each pattern has a severity rating and a threshold for the number of times that the pattern match must occur within a defined time limit to indicate malicious activity. And when those match conditions are met, a correlated event is logged. The object can connect to an isolated network event, but you can look for patterns that indicate a more significant level event. To use the objects to the fullest, ingesting Cortex XDR is a really, really good idea, pulling those into Panorama so that you can see the full picture of not only the network level, but also the endpoint level events that are occurring. All right, so correlation events. You can see we've navigated to looking at an example of the events that detected, and we've got some good information here. Some mediums and criticals. The criticals being the most concerning to me. Red is bad, generally speaking. So from there, we click down, we go into a detailed view of this, and I want to see what's in here. We got a couple different tabs. We've got match information. And within that, we see object details that's presenting information on the correlation object that triggered the match. But also we've got match details, which is a summary that includes the time, the last update time on the match evidence and the severity of the event. And if we click over to the match evidence tab, this is going to present all the information that corroborates the correlated event. It's going to list detailed information on the evidence collected for each session. Super cool stuff. And if that wasn't enough, they build in a compromised host widget that can be found in the ACC on the threat activity tab. But of course, you can customize that as you see fit and create a dedicated tab for your remediation teams to keep up front and center in their field of vision. And with that, we've got automated correlation engine in a nutshell. Cool stuff. I don't see a lot of customers watching it, possibly because they're missing the XDR integration piece, so they can't leverage it to its full potential, but it's a really neat feature. In review, we talked about the canned objects and how we can match those objects to the events with the correlation engine. But again, most powerful when integrated with XDR for endpoint visibility as well. Advanced routing engine, or as I call it, the R, because it makes me giggle a little bit. It uses logical routers rather than virtual routers to participate in layer 3 routing. And the last bullet on this slide used to say, addresses routing limitations and makes network people happy. But marketing thought networking benefits sounded a little better, which I agree, although it's albeit a little bit dating app-ish. So this allows for the creation and attachment of port-based filtering lists and conditional route maps. For us network folks, we sometimes find the routing options somewhat limited. And you may mutter to yourself, why on earth can I do this with BGP when I can do this on all my other network gear? These profiles, they provide that finer granularity to filter routes for each dynamic routing protocol and improve that route redistribution across multiple protocols. So we'll take a look at that. Step 1, you're going to go to device setup and general settings. From there, down towards the bottom, you'll see this little advanced routing checkbox that you need to click. Once you select that, it's going to tell you, hey, a commit and a subsequent reboot is required. So after you've rebooted, which, on my, do this on my 440 in my lab, pretty quick, do it on a lesser platform. It's going to take some quality time. But step 2, we're going to networking, routing, logical routers. And here we've got a VR1, has a couple interfaces in it. But let's take a look at all the options we have now within there. If I click on that logical router, we now have 12 admin distance settings, 12, as opposed to a virtual router, which has 9. So a little difference there. But let's talk BGP, since that's likely the most commonly used. After we enable on the logical route, noting that it has all the expected configuration options, we see the option to add BGP routing profiles is enabled. And you're probably thinking, hey, Scott, all of those things are in the virtual router already. Well, most of them are, but the configurable options are much more granular. But what I'm really most interested in with the advanced routing engine is the filtering profiles. So let's take a look at what great and wonderful things are in there. Route maps. Huzzah. So yeah, and I'm admittedly a little too excited about this. For inbound route map, you have even more control over which routes are allowed into the rib, right? So for example, you can prepend an AS to the AS path. This, in and of itself, is enough reason for me to say that the advanced routing engine is making the world a better place. How often do you guys have BGP links for redundancy? More often than not, right? Though sometimes across disparate data centers. So another real world example of why this is awesome. I was working on a couple Prisma Access service connections with a client. And their requirement was to advertise all RFC 1918 segments out both, yes, both service connections simultaneously and at the same time. Why? Why would they do such a thing? Because that's how it worked before Prisma came along. So we need to come up with the configuration that gave them feature parity. So if you've ever configured service connections, you know the routing options are even more limited than those available on a next-gen firewall. This client still had a different kind of blue firewall at those data centers until we get to a subsequent phase of the project. So options were a little scarce. What we ended up having to do ultimately was pull some spare routers off the shelf, blow the dust off, update the code, and let the routers do the routing and mitigate the potential of asymmetrical routing. Now, at the end of the day, with PA series, which is the plan, coupled with the advanced routing engine, we'll be able to eliminate a great deal of complexity and potential single points of failure for that particular environment. So in short, prepend is your friend, and I'm really happy to have it back in my life. In closing on advanced routing, the limited routing options have been a bit of a stumbling block for a while, but I'm really happy to see this new feature released. If I had a nickel for every time I needed to use route maps in my career, I'd have more than enough for another Red Bull that I probably don't need. Okay, summary. Everything we talked about. I know some of this is a review for you, and some of you hopefully were seeing some of it for the first time. But in either case, please don't be afraid to chase down the white papers for the ones that piqued your interest and see how they can help you in your environments. So thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed this presentation. It was a lot of fun for me putting together these examples and real world scenarios where it made a difference. My name's Scott Hammond with Nexum, and thank you guys for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Scott. Did you want to address those questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, let me see. What version of PanOS in the demo? Everything in my environment is on 10.2, my lab environment. Very cool. Create a log forwarding profile to get all the critical threats, quarantine them, and add a policy to block quarantine. IPs, GP, this is fantastic. Yes, I agree 100%. Mohammed, it is a great feature. Like to echo what Henry said, just the fact that you don't have to commit anything. There's no human interaction required. Hugely powerful. Can you get connections per second counts for zone protection profile in AI ops free? Oh my goodness, Francis, that is a fantastic ask. That has been a little bit of a guessing game for a long time, hasn't it? And for those that aren't familiar with ZPP, the zone protection profiles, Palo has some default values that are in there that they suggest using, but they're very, very conservative. And the task at hand is always enabling ZPP and then going back and fine tuning that based on the flows in your environment. And there are ways to go and get the connections per second in monitoring on the firewall. It's a little bit tedious. It's easier in Panorama. You can get it from either side, but I'm actually not sure if that's in AI ops. That's something that hadn't occurred to me to look for, but I am definitely going to go look for it now, because that will save me a lot of time in future deployments. Okay, Robert. AI ops has great potential. One of the issues I have, thousands of alerts are horribly sorted. Yes. I'm not export the rule names. I'm not sure about that particular feature, but I agree with your entire statement there. When I was in AI ops last week, I'd say in my AI ops for Nexum, the little suggestion box popped up, which said, hey, how are you liking AI ops? What do you think about AI ops in general? And that was some of the feedback that I gave, that it's really, really busy. There's all of these alerts. And yes, we know that contextual data is hugely important to us. We have to have all the data, but it's not, some of it is a little less human readable than I would like it to be. So I look forward to some enhancements there. But as to your question, I'm not entirely sure that you can export the rule names yet, but that's something I would definitely expect. Does AI ops require Cortex data lake? It does not. You can, I think it will hold up to, if I'm not mistaken, 7 days without CDL. But if you need to go historical beyond that, then yes, you will need CDL. That's one of those where they're trying to give you as much as they possibly can for free, that they can get you to buy into it once that you see it in action and you see how powerful it is. Can you override that policy block feature? I'm not sure what you're asking there, Terry. So yeah, if you want to rephrase that, Terry, I'm all ears on that one. Moving on to Robert, quick disable, since it isn't the top, AI still throws an alert. Yep, I know that's unfortunate. You do have to put it at the top. I know it's a little bit concerning to put a deny rule so close to the top, especially in a panorama environment where if you don't have your pre and post rules set up right, it could cause you problems later on down the road. But yeah, as long as you are cognizant of where that is, post rules, for example, at the top, I think it's perfectly fine to have it up top. Difference between logical and virtual. So the logical routers are only available in the advanced routing. You won't be able to see one or perceive one until you enable advanced routing. And once you do enable advanced routing, the virtual routers go away. You can't see those because it's done all from the logical routers. It's the automatic conversion. Automatic conversion from standard to advanced routing still on the roadmap, as was announced when advanced routing was first presented. I'm not sure that I understand that. I know when you enable it and bring everything over from your production environment, it puts the interfaces into the logic router, everything that was working is still working. And I haven't seen any issues with moving it over from there. I'm not sure if that answers your question though. Is this developed in-house or something Quagga based? Not sure. Not sure the answer to that, Christopher. Correlation engine has always been false positives for us. Go to side A if it's legit, side B, domain flags. Falsely flags visitation of site A as a correlation event. Okay, that's curious to me. And I've seen something similar to that. All right, so app ID, right? I've got another client that is saying, I'm getting false positives. I'm getting hits on this particular policy that's allowing, say, I don't know, we'll say Office 365. That's allowing off Office 365, but it's not supposed to be, it's actually a lower level policy that's matching that and should be matching that. And in reality, it was. It's, you know, it's the concept of app ID that, hey, I haven't watched this flow, this session flow enough to properly identify the application. And then when I do, I'm shifting it to a lower, a subsequent rule. So yeah, false positive there. And that's exactly what you're saying here. You're getting a false positive correlation event because it's matching a higher level rule that wasn't necessarily what it should have matched to begin with. So to mitigate that, really the only thing you can do is look at your policy ordering and try to be as efficient as you can with that. And I know it's a pain because of the application dependencies that are involved there. For some of these things, and you would be opening, say, SSL up out of the gate for everybody, but leveraging user ID and app ID and just really paying close attention to that, to the policy order, is the only way you're going to be able to mitigate those false positives. All right, and we got Panorama CDL. How do we set up XDR ingestion to Panorama? I forget what it's called. I'm drawing an absolute blank, but yeah, there are white papers on that, sending XDR, and I think it's just, it may be like a syslog ingestion or something. I forget exactly what it is on Panorama. You caught me off guard, but it's a fairly simple thing to do, a lot less involved than you would think. Certain apps requiring quick. That's the first I've heard of that. I have not heard of anything that requires quick. So I would be interested to know what that was. Maybe Google is up in the ante and realizing that security minded people are blocking that. Not sure, but I will keep that in mind. I'll keep my eyes on it. Reach out to my peers actually. GitHub script. Standard to advanced config. I assume that's in the in regards to the advanced routing engine. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a script for that, but me personally, something like that, this is something that I'm going to do with my own eyes rather than rely on a script. I mean, if it's a horribly complex conversion, then I might use the script as a baseline, but I'm certainly not going to trust anybody from GitHub just, you know, casually. Can you override that policy block feature in apps? Still don't get that when the policy has any for apps ports. I'm still not sure what you're saying there, Terry, but I can look into that and get back to it. All right, guys. Yeah, sorry about that, Terry. I'm just not connecting the dots there. YouTube and Android may not function without quick. Does sound like they're upping the ante then, because the last few deployments I've done have used YouTube heavily, and we have not had any issues with a quick dependency. So I would say that's a fairly new thing, but very, very interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that.